Welcome to the Ambient iPad. In this video, I'm going to use three iceGear apps to create some rhythmic synthesizer lines, and then I'll play Mellotron over that. The iceGear apps on the iPad I'll be using is Mersenne, Laplace, and Kronecker. For the Mellotron, we'll be sticking to classic sounds on the M400, the 8-voice choir, 3 violins B, bass flute, and if I can fit it in, maybe some bassoon. The signal chain is the Mellotron M4000D Mini. Its master mono analog output goes into a Boss volume pedal, which I have on the ground here. The mono output from the Boss volume pedal goes into a Boss RE202 Space Echo. The stereo output from the Space Echo goes into a Universal Audio Volt 276 interface, which communicates back and forth with the iPad Pro. So I've got a setup here in AUM. Today's jam is really going to be pretty improvisational. All I've done is quickly set up a few iceGear apps and picked some patches and tweak them, and I'm using Fugue Machine to trigger those. And I've got Fugue Machine set up with a D minor setup here. So the key will be D minor. The first thing I want to do is let me just run through the Mellotron sounds. I'm just going to have the effects on because I will be using the Space Echo with the Mellotron. So let me just go through the different sounds we'll be using on the Mellotron. Then I'll just kind of hit Fugue Machine. We'll go through each of the sounds from iceGear, and then we'll see what we can come up with for a jam. So first, from the Mellotron perspective, we've got the 8-voice choir. And again, I've got the Boss RE202 on. It's on the manual setting, so all that means is that it's however the knobs are set, that's what you get. So you can hear that classic Space Echo tails. And I do have spatializer set up just to make the stereo field a little wider, but it's pretty subtle. It's even less than 50%. Next, we've got the bass flute. And then we'll also be using, let me get to it, it is the 3 violins B. I'm not going to demonstrate this, but the only difference between the 3 violins B on the M400 Mellotron and the 3 violins on the Mark II Mellotron is that this different EQ profile. It's much darker on the M400. Oh, and by the way, it's just the M400 for sounds. The bass flute is from the M400, as is the choir. And again, 3 violins B. Again, love that Space Echo tail. The only other sound I may use, and I'm not sure if I will, is the bassoon, the M400 bassoon. I've been trying to find a way to use it because it really is cool, and I may have used it in a jam or two, but just subtly, so maybe this jam will actually work out. Okay, let me turn that off for a second so you can get the clean as a Mellotron can get. The bassoon always reminds me of Henry Cow because they used a bassoon. All right, so that's the Mellotron, and let me just reset these so that we can go through some of the structure that I may have in mind as I'm thinking about this. Let's move over to iceGear. I'm just going to start it going here. We'll start with Laplace. A bit of a bell sound, which is interesting because Laplace does kind of do metallic-y bell sounds too, but it's really more for plucking sounds. These apps are great. They're very flexible. No effects I'm using on any of these. I'm just using the internal effects again. Just got an improv together, and this is pretty, there's no grand setup going on here. All right, let's add in, not add in now. Let me turn that off, and here is Mersenne, which interestingly is more of a plucky sound, so I'm kind of using Laplace and Mersenne in opposite directions than typically. Typically, Laplace would be for plucky things, but good sound. Again, let me open that up. Using the effects that are built in here. right, and finally we've got Kronecker, which is very good for these rhythmic. They call it clockwork synthesizer. Same thing, just using the internal effects on this one. Try to make the window bigger because it does all fit in one window. And then the effects, it's just delay, but that's also acting as a reverb. Okay, let me stop that because we're going to start with Laplace. And then we'll add in Mersenne. What I might do is maybe with Laplace we'll do something with the choirs and the volume swells. You can kind of hear those tails, but they do get lost. So it sounds like it's ending more abruptly than when we're just playing the Mellotron. Then maybe we add in Mersenne. And maybe for this we use the bass flute. So this is D minor. I think I really should be using the B flat, but whatever. Yeah, let's see. All right, and then maybe we add in Kronecker for that sequence kind of thing. So I did, I set these up. I did a little mixing just to make sure the levels are fine and that the delays and the other effects are where they need to be. And then maybe once all this is going, we get the violins over it. Same manner, let's swell them in. And then we can, we'll just kind of bring them in and out. This might be the place where I try the bassoon. Let's see what it sounds like here. No volume pedal. Maybe it's just a little color and texture in the outro, but we'll see. Let me just get these reset up here. So we're going to start with the 8-voice choir on that side and then the bass flute on this side. But that's essentially it. Fairly straightforward. Not a lot of change in it, but again, like some other recent videos I've done, I'm just trying to integrate a lot more things. So instead of just the Mellotron, let's get the iPad going. And I'm really liking getting these kind of background beds going, and then really just doing some Mellotron improvs. All right, let's fade out and do the jam. I've used all of those iceGear apps before, but I'm not sure I've used them together. It's interesting because Laplace is usually thought of more as the plucky synth and Mersenne as the bell synth, but I kind of flipped that and I was doing bell sounds on Laplace, and that plucky sound was actually coming from Mersenne. Now, of course, Kronecker is its own thing. They call it a clockwork synthesizer, and you can kind of tell why. It's very rhythmic, very sequency. Sequency, if that's a word. But it was great to kind of put all three together to create a bed to do the Mellotron over it. I thought it might get kind of too busy and too muddy, but by kind of picking and editing a patch within Fugue Machine, I was able to kind of minimize that. It was still very busy. And of course, just fading things in and out, not having all three at the same time makes a difference. But the bottom line is that I've really been enjoying kind of bringing the iPad back in for apps and creating these kind of backdrops that then you can do the Mellotron over. And again, this was very improvisational. I just picked classic Mellotron sounds, all from the M400, the 3 violins, the bass flute. Now, usually it's the Mark II flute, that's the more famous one, but this one's close enough, and it really actually has a nice extended frequency range, the 8-voice choir, and then I'm always trying to find a place for the bassoon, so I just did a little of that before the fade out, and I'll keep looking for an appropriate place for the bassoon within this music. Thanks for watching, thanks for listening, and good luck with your own music.